Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Gutter Run Podcast. As always, I am your host, Andrew Paxson, joined by my co-host, Daniel Abramowitz. Daniel, how you
Howdy.
doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing just peaches and cream over here. How are you
Peaches and
doing?
cream. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, I'm doing pretty well myself. I don't know if I would go so far as to say peaches and cream, but I'm
Oh,
I'm like a
okay.
solid chocolate chip cookie, you know? Like I'm a pretty big fan. That
All
doesn't
right.
make any
Okay.
sense.
That's
That's
no.
that's
I
what we're
like
going
chocolate
with.
chip cookies. It's
I did
fine,
too. They're
you
consistent. I've always so when I meet new people or if I'm kind of like bored in a conversation and I'm thinking of like how do I engage this person, I start just throwing some wacky stuff out there. And one of which is
Oh.
like if you're talking about your likeness for either a chocolate chip cookie or a brownie, I'm under the
Oh.
impression that on any given day, a chocolate chip cookie is going to be more consistent and like better than your average brownie.
100%.
But
Couldn't
I
agree
think
more.
that the ceiling for brownie quality is higher just
Oh,
based on
really?
what goes into making them. So I think like your best possible brownie is better than your best possible chocolate chip cookie.
Okay. But the chocolate chip cookie is all reliable though. That is,
Correct, yes. And you
yes.
and I are people that value that sort of consistency. We want to
hmm
know that the thing that we're choosing to eat is going to be delicious every time and without fail.
Absolutely.
Which is why I'm a chocolate chip cookie head. But yeah,
I am too.
that's one of the various kind of thought
Yeah.
experiments that I have with people when
That's
I'm
just great, Andrew. That's just fantastic.
thanks, man.
I'm
But
glad.
people like me and I'm funny is what I've been
Yes.
told.
I'm glad we went down that rabbit hole. I wasn't going to sleep tonight if you didn't bring up the chocolate chip cookie
Oh,
conundrum.
perfect. Well, look, folks, we've got a pretty good episode for you this week. We're going to go through the usual news roundup, including the trailers of the week and some important casting news for upcoming shows.
hmm
Our main topic today is actually going to be Spider-Man Blue, written by Jeph Loeb with interior art by Tim Sale. This is published in 6 issues from 2002 to 2003, and has since been collected as a trade paperback, hardcover, so on and so forth.
hmm
And then we'll take it to what's on your nightstand. And unfortunately, we do not have any new mail with which to discuss this
No,
week. So there will be no mail call for this
you guys are
particular episode.
slacking.
They
You
are
need to send us
slacking.
some
Yeah.
mail.
Well, we gave them every opportunity last week, and I thought that Hector
Yeah.
had really kicked it off, quite well. So I was hoping that we would keep that momentum, but no, it doesn't look like we're going to, unfortunately.
Darn.
Well, that does bring us, of course, into the news roundup. First piece of news, which I guess is more news about us and about the show. We now have a YouTube channel. By the time that this goes up, we will have a YouTube channel, and our previous podcast episodes will be posted there. There will be no
Mhm.
visual. I have still not committed to that. I think one of these days there will be a benchmark where I go, you know what, maybe this is worth it, and I'll invest more in it. But at least for the time being, it will be strictly audio, but in a
Yeah.
video format, since of course it's on YouTube.
hmm
I designed a fun little thumbnail. It's kind of goofy, but it's something to have up there, so it'll work for you.
Yeah, you don't get to see our pretty faces just yet.
No, I
So,
want to keep them guessing. I mean, obviously, the
mhm.
people that are listening to this are mainly folks that know who I am, so I think that they've got an
Yeah, you
idea of
don't
what
know
I
who
look
I
like.
am,
But
maybe
no,
though.
most of
So,
them are unfamiliar with you, so
mhm.
that means that you are afforded a level of anonymity that I do
Yeah,
not
that's right.
get. You're secret. You keep the people guessing, and that's what we
That's
want,
right.
Daniel.
hmm
Well, in terms of first order of business, the teaser trailer for Thunderbolts Asterisk was finally posted on YouTube. This was apparently shown at Hall H Comic-Con around the same time that Marvel Studios revealed Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. They showed this trailer there, but had not kind of put it out to the masses. And I guess they decided that now is the time to kind of start the marketing cycle. So, Daniel, you've seen this Thunderbolts trailer. What are your thoughts?
It looked decent, I guess. As you all probably know, I'm not the biggest fan of the most recent MCU projects that have come out. I didn't see the Black Widow movie or any of that, so I'm not up to date on all the characters that they introduced in that movie. But I mean, it looks kind of fun. I mean, there's a larger cast of characters that we're getting here, some that we've seen a lot of before, some that are new. Um, I mean. it didn't look bad necessarily, and I like the fact that the Pixies were included in the soundtrack in the trailer. That was probably the highest point for me. But
Absolutely 100%.
yeah, maybe that gives me some hope about the tone of this. I don't know, maybe, but yeah, it looked okay. I mean, I wasn't blown away by anything that I saw, but yeah. What are your
I will
thoughts,
say
Jerome?
that in terms of just the premise of this film and adapting this kind of more fringe, niche area of the Marvel comics, I like
Hmm.
what I'm seeing, and I think that they have a lot of room to kind of like curtail this to better fit whatever particular vision they have for the
Yeah.
MCU going forward. And I think that this is good. I think this is also going to be a really easy spot for people to jump back in. You've got some
Hmm.
familiar faces in there. You've got some people from the Disney Plus shows, some people that have been established
Yeah.
in films, and all of which are more, I guess I would say, ground level type characters. Like they've been in larger event films, like your Bucky's or Yelena Belova, Florence Pugh's Black Widow. But most of them are realistically super soldiers at best and assassins
Right.
otherwise. Like you don't really
Hmm.
have a character that is like the level of a Thor or a Hulk,
Oh, yeah.
except for the Bob character. You
Oh,
know anything about
yeah.
this guy? Do you know who this is?
No, I do not know anything about Bob.
Okay, well, I guess spoilers for our audience, and I guess spoilers for you. So that character is played by Lewis Pullman. Originally it was going to be Stephen Young, but he dropped out, I think, to be in another project. I don't know if he just lost interest or if it was one of those things where it truly was just, hey, I'm already booked to do this other thing. I'm sorry, I can't do
Yeah.
this. But Lewis Pullman appears to be playing the Sentry, which is one of several comic characters that kind of inverts the idea of a Superman. The Sentry is this kind of like
Oh.
all powerful deity, almost of a character whose power is drawn from this like strange kind of demonic relationship that he has with a otherworldly entity that I think is called the Void, perhaps.
Hmm.
Um, but the most interesting thing I think about the character for me is that when he was introduced in Marvel Comics, he was retconned as having existed the whole time, but that everybody had forgotten who he was. So there were like panels that were drawn that were like very, like larger than life, iconic panels that you had seen in other comics.
Yeah.
And then he was just like worked into the back of them
Hey
and stuff like
guys.
that. Right. Yeah. Like he had always been there, but that everybody had
Oh.
forgotten who he was. And I just think that that's like a really fun way to kind of go about doing that.
Yeah.
Um, but
Don't hate that.
yeah, the he's not somebody that's been on my radar my whole life. In fact,
Hmm.
that whole rundown that I just gave you of this character is likely wrong in some capacity. But yeah, it's he seems fun. He's supposed to be a genuine threat. My guess by watching the trailer is that all of these military types, these like blacklist style like spec ops characters were
Yeah.
sent to recover him probably. I,
Hmm.
I am thinking that we're getting to the point in the MCU where they're going to start having privatized superhero teams. Like
Uh.
that's what I think this Thunderbolts is going to be. And if I had to guess, the Sentry in this film is probably going to be a corporate sponsored and created superhero. Like I think that
Oh.
that's the purpose.
Okay,
And
interesting.
I have a theory about what's kind of going on at the end of that trailer because at the end of it, Elaine from Seinfeld is there,
That's true.
who has been involved in the MCU, I think, since maybe the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Hmm.
Um, but she has assembled this team in a penthouse that looks like it's probably the Avengers Tower, which we've known for, I mean, years and years now. Like I think since like
Hmm.
maybe like 2017 or something like that, had been bought out and was going to a different entity in the MCU, but nobody knew
Hmm.
who, and it's been teased over and over and over again, and it's just like this loose thread. I think what they're probably going to do is at the end of that scene, a version of Norman Osborn, Willem Dafoe or otherwise, is going to walk in. And the
Oh
reason that
man.
it's called Thunderbolts Asterisk is because at the end of the movie, they will reveal that this is actually the Dark Avengers team, which was a
Uh.
comic story in, again, I think the mid 2000s. I want to say either around or immediately after Civil War, where Norman Osborn created a corporate like sponsored team of superheroes that he was putting out there to try and like restore faith in heroes in the public, and also he
Hmm.
could keep them on a shorter leash. But they all were villains that had been either reformed or were now posing as versions of heroes. So like
Yeah, okay.
at this point in time, Norman Osborn, rather than being the Green Goblin, was Iron Patriot. He wore an Iron Man armor. You had kind of like an interesting and eclectic group of heroes in there. I think that they had
Hmm.
like Wolverine, except rather than being like actual Wolverine, it was Wolverine's son, Dakin, who has like two claws instead of three. There was like a Hawkeye
Hmm.
in there that I think was actually the Daredevil villain Bullseye. So it was a
Oh,
pretty interesting story arc.
yeah.
And I imagine that that's what they're doing here. And you might be like, well, why Norman Osborn? I don't know, man. Maybe it's not Norman Osborn. That's just kind of that's the vibe that I'm getting, and that's what I'm feeling currently.
Okay, all right. That would be cool. I would really, that might draw me back into the MCU if they did something like that. That
I
that
think
sounds
it
kind of neat.
I think it would be like a nice olive branch to people, and I think that it would be so like unattached to this like a larger overarching multiverse
Yeah.
story that people
Hmm.
would find this as like an easy in. Like it's an
Yeah.
easy way to look at this and go, you know what? Like I still like these stories that are being told, and I think that they're
Hmm.
enjoyable. So, but yeah, that's kind of all that I've got for Thunderbolts. It is directed by Jake Schreier, who did the Paper Towns adaptation from 2015, I think, which is a John Green book, I want to say.
Oh yeah.
And then
Okay.
he also did an indie film called like Robot and Frank that I've heard excellent things about and I think like reviewed really well, but I know very few people that have seen it. So he's one of these
Okay.
directors that it seems the MCU just went, hey, you made like a well reviewed and appreciated indie film. Can you come and just be a figurehead for our new action movie? We'll handle it, but you just like we'll tell people that you're the
Yeah.
one that directed it because they
Hmm.
seem to do that semi frequently. Um, moving on from that. I guess that this is fairly big news because we've kind of covered this before, although
Hmm.
I didn't realize that this actor was in contention at the time. Per the Hollywood Reporter, and it's since been reported by several other publications kind of in that media sphere. Kyle Chandler has been cast as Hal Jordan in HBO's forthcoming Lantern series. The word on the street is that this is strictly a television contract, and he has no obligation to appear in films following the end of this series.
That makes sense to
So
me.
I was gonna say that tells me one of two things. One, they're trying to go the anti-Marvel route where they don't lock up an actor for 10 years because maybe they want to keep it more like a touch and go basis, which
Hmm.
that's the most positive outlook. The negative outlook is that he dies in the show. And
Yeah.
that's kind of it for him, which I would say is maybe the more likely option there.
That's what I think. That's
Um,
what I think.
I guess barring that, but barring our speculation, what do you think about Kyle Chandler in the role?
I think he could do good. I think he looks the part, in my opinion. And I mean, yeah, there's no really complaints from me. He's not. I mean, there's nothing wild about this pick to me. I mean, it sounds like a
Yeah.
safe pick to me. So yeah, I got no complaints.
I like that it wasn't somebody that was immediately on my radar for this, even though he
Hmm.
kind of like fits the mold. I think he definitely has the look for it. And
Hmm.
I know that he has kind of the spark and the charisma and that he can be quite snarky just from like the other
Yeah.
films and television series that I've seen him in.
Hmm.
And honestly, everything he's in, he's very good in too. Like I've
Hmm.
never seen the guy turn in a bad performance.
Hmm.
Um, so I was really surprised by this, honestly, and I
Hmm.
thought like pleasantly surprised. I guess another point of speculation, James Gunn seems to be with the projects that he's already taken on and kind of spearheaded, building out a very wide continuity, like
Yeah.
timeline wise within the
Yeah.
DCU. So I guess there is some opportunity that we would at a point in the future see a prequel Green Lantern Corps, film or whatnot that
It is
could include a
possible.
younger Hal Jordan,
Yeah.
or like an Alan Scott Green Lantern or something like that,
That would
like
be cool too.
that would be really cool. And I guess they have all of that room open for them, which is nice. I
Hmm.
appreciate that he's creating almost this like ongoing mythology that dates back even
Hmm.
to, like World War II.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think good stuff. I really have no complaints about that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sounds good to me, Gunn, Mr. Gunn.
Mr. Gunn, Mr.
You
Gunn,
got,
if you need somebody to advise on this, or if you would
Yeah.
like for somebody to share their thoughts, Daniel and I are absolutely open to that.
Yeah. Make sure that you get the Gunner Run stamp of approval before you do anything else, buddy, okay?
We could even change the name of the podcast to the Gun Run if you would prefer that. Well,
Oh,
actually, that
wow.
denotes an actual, a legal action. So maybe we shouldn't do that. But it would be quite fun regardless.
Yes, that would be cool.
Next bit of news. This one was quite disheartening to me, even though I might be the only person that was, keyed into this. Hellboy the Crooked Man, which was the upcoming Hellboy feature film adaptation, very, I don't know if I would go so far as to say indie, but it was definitely the most student film looking of the Hellboys that's come out up to this point. But it is skipping its theatrical release in the United States entirely, and it's instead going straight to streaming on October 8th. Now I think that this is going to be one of those situations where you could rent this movie for, X number of dollars. Normally it's like $20 or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't think this means that like, oh, you just turn on Max and it's there like all of a
Yeah.
sudden. I just think that they're skipping the theatrical window and effectively doing what I mean, we used to call these straight to DVD movies, but I guess now it's straight to being rentable on
I
your
don't
home television.
I don't know if I would say I feel like there's a little bit more prestige with the straight to streaming because the straight to DVD stuff was like mega Duke in my
Pretty
opinion.
garbo, yeah,
But
definitely.
like Rebel Ridge that we watched last week was a straight to streaming, and it was it was a high quality film. Like that could have
Yeah.
absolutely been released in theaters, and it was a high level film. But yeah, it's we've kind of reached this point in the industry where things have evolved, and like there's weird means of like releasing things and different levels. There's way more levels of releasing than were before. You can get it
Yes.
out many different ways. So yeah, interesting, interesting.
So I did want to ask because I'm normally the guy going about, like I introduce a character or an item and then I give you this brief history of it because I'm so long-winded. But what is your relationship with Hellboy in the previous media adaptations? Have you seen those movies? Do you care for them?
I haven't seen any of them, but it has piqued my interest because I saw that this new one was coming out, and so I kind of started looking into the previous movies with what's his name? The
We got Ron Perlman
Ron
was the
Perlman.
the the
Yeah.
two that he did with Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, I can't I remember I saw something that piqued my interest about it. But I started like reading about Hellboy. I thought about picking up like the first volume or something because it
Yeah,
seems like a really interesting story. But I haven't seen any of the movies or anything, but I
gotcha.
know that he's like from hell and that they found him in World War II and stuff like that. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. No, he has a very interesting kind of backstory. And something that I appreciate about Hellboy is that it's a world where all of these like, you know, this myth and lore and these kind of like magical elements like exist in the real world.
Yeah.
But because Hellboy also exists and he's effectively part of like a paranormal policing force, it's just like all of that's just another day on the job for him.
Yeah,
Like he
yeah.
just kind of seems like existentially tired because
Hmm.
he's realistically just like a janitor for paranormal stuff. And I think that that's great. He's such a fun character and
He seems like it, yeah.
I like these kind of like independent additions to the comic canon so that, hey, you
Hmm.
don't have to just read a Batman, a Spider-Man, a Superman, something like that. If you want something odd,
Right.
if you want something that kind of gets into this like gothic kind of Lovecraftian lore, but then also looks at
Yeah.
like Irish and Celtic, fairy tales and things of that nature, like it spans all of these different ideas. You could read
Hmm.
Hellboy, and there's a
Hmm.
little bit of that for you as
Hmm.
well. Yeah, I think Hellboy's great. I think this movie looked pretty promising, if a bit underwhelming, but also I understand that the most recent Hellboy film, which was a David Harbour feature, and I want to say that was directed. I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy that did Dog Soldiers also directed that, which I love.
Hmm.
But it was not received particularly well. People were
I
notably
remember.
harsh on it, and I think
Yeah.
undeservedly so, because it was pretty fun, but you could tell that it was at some point it had been taken away from the director and whatever initial vision that he
Oh.
had and was kind of bastardized by the production company.
Hmm.
And even still, I think that it's quite solid. I just think that people were unwilling to settle for a vision of Hellboy that wasn't Guillermo del Toro's. And I
Hmm.
love those first two Hellboy movies that Guillermo did. I mean, the guy's kind of like a savant in the horror space, but ultimately, I don't think that he was so much doing Hellboy movies as he was just looking to do more Guillermo del Toro movies that featured Hellboy. And that's not bad. That I mean, he's a director. He has his own vision.
Yeah,
He's right to do that. But like, if you're a Hellboy fan, I don't think those Guillermo del Toro movies are like it for you. You know, like I
probably
don't think that
not.
those are kind of your thing. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I just never felt like they did the character kind of the justice that I wanted to see done. I actually thought that the David Harbour one was kind of closer and maybe more authentic to the comic,
Yeah.
even if it was a bit more grotesque and kind of violent at times. But yeah, Hellboy the Crooked Man looks fun. Honestly, this is probably the move for it, you know. But it is disappointing. This was one that I was going to check out in theaters, probably by
Yeah.
myself. I don't think that I could convince my girlfriend to go see a Hellboy movie.
I would go see it with you, True. I
Thank you.
would drive down and see you. Yeah.
Wow, well, I really appreciate that. Oh, speaking of seeing things, I want to get this out of the way early just in case I forget. Next week, I had originally, I think, suggested that we would do the Salem's Lot remake since it's on Max. But next week, Joker 2 comes out.
Wait, already?
Yeah, it comes out like I guess I just forgot that September transitions so quickly into October, but
I
yeah,
know it's this month has gone by so fast that yeah, it's crazy.
I'm like 90% certain that Joker 2 comes out October 4th.
Oh shoot. Okay, all right.
So I guess we're seeing that this coming weekend and we will
We're
be talking
jokering it
about it.
up
We
next
will be
week.
jokering it up. I have a prediction about that, and since we're now recording this, I can actually say these out loud and then kind of like reference
Okay.
them.
Yes.
Um I'm thinking that the Arthur Fleck Joker character is going to be murdered at the end of the film. And I don't know. I guess you could think, oh, well, he's going to be put to death by electric chair or something like that. He's committed a heinous act. That's going to happen. No, I think Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn is going to shoot him. And you might
Yeah.
be like, for what reason do you believe that that's happening? I don't know. Something about this universe and the way that it set up this character, I think that it would be a very interesting kind of like punchline to the joke if it turns
Hmm.
out that this version of Harley wants the same kind of like fame and prestige that Arthur Fleck got from inciting these kind of like violent circumstances. And then rather
Hmm.
than him getting, because I don't know what else you do with the character. Like this is not comic book
I
Joker,
know.
you know? So
Yeah,
my thought
no.
is that maybe in an attempt to like supersede the Joker character, she just shoots him at the end, kind of comparable to the way that he had killed Robert De Niro in that first film.
That
And
would
and
be
I think that that would
interesting.
be kind of like strangely poetic, almost like a passing of the baton.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I guess the idea would be that Joker is more of like an idea that is passed on between people that want to make changes in the status quo, rather than
Hmm.
Joker being, oh, this specific character is the Joker that you know and love from your comic books. Because guess what? He's
Wow.
not. That first Joker movie is barely a Joker movie. I enjoyed it. I went and watched it by
Yeah,
myself in a movie theater, like I was not frustrated
it
by it
was
or
fun.
anything.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I own the Steelbook, I'm a big
This
Steelbook
guy's got
guy.
steelbooks on
I got
steelbooks, I tell
steelbooks
you
for
what.
days. But yeah, I just
All right.
that movie works best as a Scorsese homage.
Right.
If you were to strip out any mentions of like the Joker or whatnot, like that's still a film.
Mhm.
Like you don't lose it by going, oh, the ideas that I have in this only function when they are attached to the Batman character, the Joker. Like that's not
Yeah.
really necessary for
No,
that movie.
no,
So
no.
anyway, we will be talking about that on the next show, so you can look forward
Absolutely.
to that, folks.
Hmm.
And then the last piece of news that I got here, the Last of Us Part 2 teaser trailer. We had seen some set photos. We knew that this was coming along pretty rapidly. But we finally got a teaser trailer, and this will be coming to HBO in 2025. Um, Daniel, you've never played the Last of Us games, is that correct?
I didn't. Oh, I
Okay.
I had my first like real gaming console. I had a Wii, but then like
Nice.
my first
Based.
like gaming console I played COD on, like all the kids do,
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
PS3.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
remember that The Last of Us came out, and I wasn't about that zombie business. I don't know why I didn't like zombies or any, I don't know, I just wasn't about it or anything. But I
Interesting.
kind of regret it because it is like an all-time classic now. But I think also part of it was that it looked too much like a TV show for me. I remember I played the demo of it actually, I
Yeah.
think. and it didn't feel like a video game to me. It almost felt like not necessarily like a telltale game, but it did kind of feel like I was just going from like scene to scene, kind of,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
playing, the story. So I guess it is good they made it into a TV show. I didn't watch season one though. I didn't watch season one though. I
Well,
don't
that's
know
okay
why.
because most of the United States did, Daniel, and they enjoyed it greatly. That's
I'll
so
probably watch
funny.
it.
That's so
I don't,
funny that,
yeah.
that you explain the game that way because it's been an ongoing kind of complaint about PlayStation first party titles. I think
Mhm.
probably since like the original Uncharted came out.
Probably.
That their
Yeah, that
games are
makes sense.
effectively games on rails that are really just like the gameplay is the narrative device. So like
Hmm.
you play the game just to experience the story that they are sharing with you. And
Hmm.
look, you can make your game however you want to. I don't think that that's a negative. I played The Last of Us. I really enjoyed the first game. I very much did
Hmm.
not enjoy the second game.
Oh, don't get him started, people.
Yeah,
He
it's
hates the second
I'm gonna
one.
have that's gonna be a really tough thing to try and discuss because not only have you not played one or two, you also haven't watched the first season. So
Is the first season just like the first game?
yeah,
Or is
it
okay.
does it follows the story of the first game like impeccably. If anything, it
Okay.
improves upon and adds additional detail and fleshes
Hmm.
out parts of the story that you didn't get enough of, in that first game. So
Yeah, okay.
I think that the show was an improvement on the game, and I think that much of that is because the game was effectively built again as like a narrative device. Like
Right.
ultimately, at the forefront of the Last of Us series is a story about loss, grief, and violence begetting violence. And the
Hmm.
important thing about like it, like the developer sharing that with you is for them to get their point across. And I
Hmm.
appreciate that as a fellow artist. So when, it was announced that The Last of Us was going to be an HBO original series, I was like, this is perfect. And in fact,
Yeah.
most of my complaints about The Last of Us Part 2 will almost certainly be alleviated by putting it in the narrative context of a television show.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
so I'm very much looking forward to this, but yes, did I enjoy the second game? No, I did not. Um, and it has so little to do with our friend of the podcast Noah. He was on to talk about Friday the 13th. Very much enjoys the Last of Us series and loves The Last of Us Part 2. Thinks that it is terrific. I think he's even thrown, like the term masterpiece around. Not lightly either, like I think that
Yeah.
he does genuinely believe that about the game. My issue with something like the Last of Us Part 2 is that having the knowledge that the game is attempting to push a narrative message or idea to you as an audience member, that it wants for you to experience and share and kind of feel in the very direct way that they are choosing you to feel it.
Mm.
I think that your agency as an individual unto yourself is limited. And yeah, that's maybe just part of the experience of playing the game. That's how they built it out. But let me frame something for you, Daniel.
All right.
There's a point in the game where you as a character have been set on the warpath. You were seeking revenge and you were upset about it. You've also switched kind of viewpoints. You end up playing as two different people that took place in the same event, but on different sides of it. So they have different
Hmm.
perspectives about this having occurred, right? And
Hmm.
those individuals come into contact with one another and they are looking to harm each other. And let's say that there's another character that exists. So I'll call it character A, character B. Character B does a thing that upsets character A. Character A wants revenge. Okay. Character
Hmm.
B, you spend a lot of time getting to play as and you're endeared with, and you kind of like understand where they're coming from, even if they did a thing that that you as character A did not approve of. And in the cast of character B, there is a character that you're shown is pregnant. And that's a really big deal in this kind of post-apocalyptic playground. Kind of like Children of Men, like there's a kind of inherent sanctity of life there that you want to protect and value at all
Yep.
costs. And also, as character B, you know this person that is pregnant, you care about them, you want them to be safe. You're
Hmm.
forced as character A to stab character B to death. You don't get to choose whether or not you
Oh,
do that. You were forced as
oh.
character A. Sorry, you're forced as character A to stab the pregnant character B character to death. Does that make more sense? I'm sorry. It's getting
Yes.
difficult without saying names. But yes,
Yeah, the alphabet is hard for me,
yes, no,
so
sorry. So character A that is trying to get the revenge, against character B, you end up as character A meeting that side character for
hmm
character B's kind of, like group of people, the pregnant
hmm
one, and you end up stabbing that pregnant person to death. The game requires that you do that.
I know.
You can't make your way out of that.
That's
You
that's
can't
what I've
choose not to. And the game has already given you the knowledge that this character is pregnant. So you walk into it like knowing that this is a thing that's going to happen. And
yeah.
I talk with people about this and they're like, why are you so hung up on that? What's the frustration? Because I understand that the theme of the story is about breaking the cycle of violence. And I understand that in order to initiate that as an element in the gameplay, you have to first have the violence occur and know that you feel bad about it. You feel pain and anguish and you know that the thing
hmm
that you did was not right. But I already got that. I got that because I understand the story. I got that because I understand gameplay and I'm like media literate. I don't need for you to require that I, as a character, stab another character to death when that character's pregnant. And yeah, like character A didn't know that, but you played as character B and they did know that, which means that you, as an audience member, are aware of this. It just makes no sense to me. It's such an odd way to
Yeah.
go about kind of like pushing this messaging. Which again, I guess all of this to say, I think that this will be more palatable as a television series because you don't have the immediate kind of like responsibility of playing the
Yeah,
character that does
right.
the
You're just
actions.
watching
You
it.
just get to watch them do the actions.
Yep.
Oh man, did I just burn like 10 minutes just talking about
Probably.
that? Oh
This man
geez.
has
Yeah.
a freaking yeah, he hates the
Yeah,
second one.
I've got some issues with it, and that's like just one of many,
Yeah, right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, I'm letting go of the vitriol. I know that people don't appreciate this, and one of these days, if this podcast becomes popular, I'm going to start getting hate mail and death threats because of my
Yeah,
poor opinion of The Last of Us Part Two. But
better watch out.
such is life.
hmm
Um, this will lead us into our main topic, which will hopefully be a lot less controversial, and that is
Yeah.
Spider-Man Blue. Jeph Loeb and Tim
Spider-Man
Sale,
Blue.
incredible Spider-Man comic that kind of encompasses a very particular time in the publication history of this character
Mm-hmm.
and gives it to you with all of the visual nostalgia and callbacks that you could ever want.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel, you had read Spider-Man Blue at least once in the past, but that was
Yes.
quite a while ago, to my understanding. Yes.
Yeah, it was at least 5 years ago, I want to say.
So
Yeah.
jumping back into this, what are your kind of immediate takeaways and what are your thoughts about the story?
I think it's even better than I remembered because the last time I read it, well, it was kind of around the time, well, it wasn't necessarily around the time. It was still when I was like getting into comics kind of because I remember I talked to a friend of ours and maybe even you about like what are some good Spider-Man comics to read, and I think both of you had mentioned Spider-Man Blue and
Yeah.
how good it was, and then I looked it up, and everybody just loves it and everything. But I had trouble finding a copy of it, like because it's been out of print or it had been out of print at that time, and
Yeah.
all I could find were like used copies that were like super expensive or new ones were even more expensive, and so I had to like get it on my Kindle and like read
Nice.
it on my
Okay.
Kindle,
Yeah.
and I read it all in one night because I loved it so much. And I don't think I digested all of what it was because I had read it all in one night and read it so fast that
Yeah.
I wasn't able to fully, get all the details and all of its greatness in that one night. And so yeah, when you suggested that you wanted to do a podcast about it again, I was like, heck yes, because I've been meaning to go back and reread it, get a better grasp of it. And yeah, it's phenomenal. It is quintessential Spider-Man storytelling. Like if you're a
hmm
Spider-Man fan, you need to read this. Like it's I mean it just I mean the artwork is great. The storytelling is great. I love it really captures the time period that it's set in, like I think it's
Yes.
like Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man 40 through 48 is like the issues or something that it's supposed to
Yep.
be like calling back to or something. It really gets that era of Spider-Man down. Even like the corniness of it. Like
Yeah.
there's a bit of corniness and cheesiness to it, but like that's like it's so endearing though. Like
Yeah.
I love it. Like Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. There's some great dudes, you know. R.I.P. though.
Yeah, rest in peace to the boy Tim Sale. And that was one of my kind of immediate takeaways having read this because I've read the story I think maybe 3 or 4 times over the years. This was one of the
Mhm.
first Spider-Man comics I was actually ever introduced to. I have a
Mm.
good a longtime family friend who had been reading comics long before I was even born, probably. But
Mhm.
I remember him loaning this to me when I was very young and not really piecing together what was going on story wise, but just like
Mhm.
looking at the art and being mesmerized by the vibrancy
Yeah.
of the color and kind of
Yeah.
like how exaggerated the form was, and these like really, kind of like dark inks that just make everything pop. And I was reading it, just the other day, and I actually finished it today, just shortly before we started recording.
Mhm.
And man, Tim Sale, one of the best to ever do it, dude.
I
Like
know, man.
it does bring about a genuine sadness in me knowing that that is a talent that can never be kind of like, replicated
Yeah.
or seen again. But luckily we
Mhm.
have these comics, like that's kind of
Absolutely.
that is the legacy of the individual.
Mhm.
Um, I echo everything that you say. Quintessential Spider-Man reading. I also think that something nice about this is that it does a good job of recontextualizing or bringing about some of those story elements from those early Spider-Man runs, the particular
Mhm.
issues that you mentioned, and giving them to you in kind of like a nice, neat package with a bow on it.
Yes.
Because it is difficult as we age further and further away from those original stories and how they were written. It's kind of difficult to go back to that. I think
Yeah.
it's honestly comparable just in terms of like the changing history of linguistics to when you go back and you read like some romantic era like prose and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what this guy's saying. I genuinely think that sometimes going back and reading like some like 60s like Stanley Steve Ditko Spider-Man stuff. I'm like, what is that slang? Like I don't
I
understand
know.
what this
Yeah.
means. But then you see it kind of like brought into a more modern day with this, and it's told in like a condensed format. And I think that it helps you to get the gist and kind of like the essence of all of those original stories in this
Yeah.
like, perfectly put together,
Hmm.
beautiful package. Um, I do want to also call out the colorist for this was Steve Bucoletto. I'm probably butchering that. I apologize. Tim Sale, to my understanding, would pencil and ink all of his own stuff, but the colors in this I do think are like very terrific,
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
and they're so
Yeah.
of a specific era. I
Hmm.
completely agree. This book is anachronistic in like the time period that it's set in. But I
Hmm.
appreciate that because I kind of think that a lot of these characters work best in the time period that they were originally written
I
for.
know.
It's
Absolutely.
like the closer Spider-Man gets to modern day, the less interesting I find him to
Yeah.
be.
Hmm.
um because the quality of life has changed, the experience, that the way that you socialize with people has changed. So a lot of the issues that Spider-Man may have had as he existed back in the 60s aren't as like relevant today as they would have been
Yeah.
then, but that's the stuff that you associate with the character. That's why we find him
Hmm.
earnest and endearing. That's why we love Peter Parker.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, it's great. I will say something quite interesting about this that I did want to get your opinion on. This book is ultimately about, full spoilers, by the way. Most of this will be common knowledge, though. I would be surprised if you're listening to this podcast and are not aware of this stuff. But yes, from
Hmm.
this point on, spoilers. Um, the story is ultimately about the death of Gwen Stacy.
It's yeah,
But
that I was gonna say that this story seems like a love letter to the character of Gwen Stacy.
100%, yes. And at the point that this was published, Gwen Stacy had not been like brought back in any capacity.
Hmm.
That has
Right.
since changed, which I do think makes part of like the emotional poignancy of this book not as relevant anymore, which is very frustrating to me. But now all of this to say, I was surprised when I initially read it, when I've reread it since, the death of Gwen Stacy is not actually featured in this story.
Right.
Like there is reference to her death. The framing device is that Spider-Man I guess in the current day, whenever that would have been for him, has found a old kind of like cassette recorder and is monologuing and kind of recalling his initial meetings with and falling for this girl, Gwen Stacy. And through that lens, you get to relive these historical moments of the Spider-Man character and kind of see
Hmm.
that relationship blossom. And dude, it's a knockout. Like it's incredible, but they do all this without actually redoing the death of Gwen Stacy.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of masterful because
It
you
is.
still understand how harsh that was for Spider-Man as a character and the weight that it has placed upon him and how it has affected his life, years and years after.
Hmm.
Um, but you don't have to experience that tragic moment again yourself as a reader, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so have you read the original Death of Gwen Stacy? Is that anything that
Yes.
you've interacted with? Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Hmm. Yeah.
It still reads pretty well, does it
I think
not?
so. Yeah.
I think that is one of those comics that holds up, and there's a reason why people hold it in such high regard.
Hmm.
Um, I guess follow-up question then to that, is it a requirement that you've read The Death of Gwen Stacy to read Spider-Man Blue?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. That's not because it's been a while since I read The Death of Gwen Stacy, but it's it was important to the character, but it was the death of Gwen Stacy, from my understanding, is that the writer wanted to bring back like Mary Jane as like Spider-Man's number one gal, because like he didn't have as much regard for Gwen Stacy. So I don't. It's not. It's you don't get a lot of Gwen Stacy's character in the death of Gwen Stacy, and I so that's not necessary to Spider-Man Blue, which in my opinion is a story about Gwen Stacy. If that makes sense, I don't know if that what I said made
No,
sense at all.
I think that that does, and I would agree with you in that the the specific characteristics of the death of Gwen Stacy's story are not at all important to
Right.
Spider-Man Blue.
Yeah.
Like none of that is relevant. It's relevant knowledge that you know that Gwen has passed, but they
Yeah.
tell you that in Spider-Man Blue.
Right. Yeah.
So you're not missing out on anything from having not seen that. Um, but yeah, I just think that like if you're going to do love letters to a specific era of comics, like this is how you do that. I really can't
Absolutely.
think of an instance of it having been done better. And I do have to give Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale credit where credit is due, because not only did they do this for Spider-Man, they did it for Captain America with Captain America White. They did it with the Hulk for the Hulk Gray. They did it with Daredevil Yellow. Like that whole kind of like colors quartet of Marvel stories, I think are all pretty much of comparable quality, which is insane that you could have a run like that and have them all be
Yeah.
that solid, you know?
Hmm.
Um, I just can't. I mean, for the most part, that they do not miss. Obviously, every writer is going to falter every now and then.
Hmm.
But I mean, these are the same guys that also did Long Halloween and Dark Victory and Catwoman When in Rome and all of these like equally iconic, stories across the aisle with
Yeah.
DC.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful, I think, as a comic reader and aspiring kind of comic creator, that stuff like this exists, because I think that it really shows you the value of the medium. Like every time I get to those final two pages or whatnot, where Mary Jane walks in on Peter in present day recording this, and she goes, "Hey, tell her I said hello, will you?"
Yeah.
From a friend. I nearly tear up like
I
every
know.
time because it's
It's
so resonant.
yeah, it's poignant. Yeah.
And I guess it's one of those things where I have to imagine that Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale were probably avid fans and readers of the Spider-Man comics of that day and age,
Hmm.
which is how they're so, you know, ready and able to kind of like recreate that story and the essence of that story and what it meant for the characters in question. It's just really beautiful, and I think that it kind of reminds you of like the potential of the medium.
Hmm. I think as much as the story of Spider-Man Blue is a love letter to the character of Gwen Stacy, the fact that Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale wrote the story, like the writing of it, I think is a love letter to like Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and what all
Definitely.
they did. So
And I think that
yeah,
they specifically mention in there, like, I don't know if it's in the references or in some of the art or whatnot. It's like with regards to Stanley, Steve Ditko, John Romita
yeah,
Sr. Like
hmm,
it's
yep,
very much acknowledging those that came before and the work that they
hmm,
did and kind of like recontextualizing or iterating rather on the work that existed previously.
yep,
And I
hmm,
will say, Tim Sale does a terrific job, I think, of emulating a John Romita Sr. Spider-Man and like all of his
hmm,
kind of character designs. Something that I also really appreciate about this is that you pretty much get a Sinister Six lineup
yeah,
with the Rogues Gallery and how they're featured in each of the different issues.
hmm, that's
Um,
cool.
I I love the like super classic lizard design where he is just a large man with a lizard face and he still has the lab coat and everything. Like I think that that's
Yes,
it's iconic and it rings so true to me. Um I, I really like
but the rhino, that
the
guy.
rhino's great. I found that interesting. There's that panel where like Peter goes to Kurt Connors to use like a sample of the rhino's costume to try and figure out what it is that he wears as kind of his armor plating and if there's a way to get
Hmm.
it off of him. And then he ends up combining whatever sort of isotope he has there with his web fluid and then spraying it all over him. And then he just is a giant naked dude like in the middle of the street,
Yeah,
And I'm like, this is kind
yeah.
of goofy. Like it's silly. But it's not silly like you're laughing in the presence of the comic, not at the comic, if that makes any
Yes,
sense.
yep,
Like you
yep,
can tell that the comic also knows that this is quite a goofy thing that has
yeah.
happened. And that's why it's
Hmm,
fun.
hmm.
I also just think anytime I read one of these older Spider-Man stories that just like really hit, the nail on the head. It makes me more and more frustrated at kind of like current adaptations of Spider-Man in popular media
Yeah,
because they're
yeah.
not getting it, man. Like
No.
they're obviously not getting it, and I think that it shows, and we're missing this very iconic character and what they mean to so many people.
Hmm.
And it's disappointing, I think, to me ultimately. And this is
Yeah.
no I'm not here to pick apart kind of like the Tom Holland Spider-Man adaptations, but and actually even last week I want to say I mentioned something that like, hey, not every adaptation needs to be so true to the source material if you're sticking to the essence of the character. But I
Yeah.
think that with modern adaptations, they have kind of lost the essence of the character, and
Hmm.
he's starting to feel less and less like a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Although hopefully No Way Home fixed a lot of that. I guess we'll see kind of like
Yeah, yeah.
we're
We'll
we're
see.
yet to see what will come of that going
Hmm.
forward, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I think that that's really most of what I had to kind of discuss there. It's difficult to talk about a comic because you don't want to just like pull the thing out and go page by page. But I
Yeah.
suppose we should probably rate this. And I would say without much thought on my end, this is like a must see or rather a must read regardless of circumstance.
Yeah, I understand the struggle, because I thought about buying it this time, but like the cheapest copy I found was like $50. I was like, no. But if you can get it on Kindle, please read it, or yeah, do whatever you can to read it because it is, I mean, not just for like Spider-Man comics. I think it is like for any comic book reader, I think you should read Spider-Man Blue. It's just a great comic all the way around.
100%. It is like a high watermark for that character and for Marvel Comics at large.
Yeah.
And it's also quite, yeah, I mean, in 6 issues, it's relatively self-contained. You don't have a lot of
Yeah.
baggage of like an
Yep.
ongoing story. You can just read it for what it is and then step away from it. And it's
Hmm.
just as good now as it was when I originally read it. So yeah,
Yep.
I'm a super big fan and I really, really appreciate
Hmm.
the story. Did you have any other thoughts on Spider-Man Blue before we move on?
I don't think so. Yeah, it's great. That's all I can say about it. It's a
Good
great
stuff.
story.
Good stuff. I always worry in transitioning between topics that I'm going to at some point cut you off when you had like a banger of an idea. So I just
Oh
I always
no,
want to make sure that I
I will
jump
cut
back in.
you off.
Oh, okay.
I will make my ideas known.
That's even better. I do deeply appreciate that. Well, thank you for discussing this main topic and thank you for reading that story with me. We're now going
Oh
to
yes.
transition into what's on your nightstand. Daniel, what's on your nightstand, man?
Um, so I've kind of been gaming a little more lately, like late at night, like when my wife goes to bed, I'll game a little bit because like I have so many games that I've just started and never finished,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they're all like good games, and like I don't know what it is if I'm just like can't commit to something, to finish it. But
Yeah.
now that I kind of I feel like I have a little bit more time now at night to get back into gaming, and so I've started playing GTA 5 again after all these years. Because okay, so GTA 5 came out in like 2013,
Yes.
but I was not allowed to play those kind of games back in 2013. So it took me a while before I was able to like actually, get my hands on GTA and see what it was about. Um, but yeah, I never finished the story mode, and so I was like, oh, we'll get back into here and see if it's still fun, and it is still like super fun. Like it's crazy to me that this game came out in 2013. It kind of looks like it,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
like on the Xbox One and on a 4K TV. You can tell that it's like over 10 years old.
Yeah.
But the fact that how big the world is and like what you can do in it, I think is still kind of like crazy that like they were able to accomplish that like back in on like PS3s and stuff. Like I cannot imagine playing GTA 5 on a PS3. That's like insane to me to think about.
No, I can't either, even though like at the time I think that I guess you could have. Well, let's think. So 2013, so that would have been pretty much either in tandem with or just after the launch of that console generation of like the Xbox One and the PS4, right?
Yeah, I think it came out for both when like it
Okay.
came out, I'm pretty
God,
sure.
that's crazy. I didn't even,
Yeah.
yeah, I hadn't thought about that in so
It's the
long.
game has spanned like three console generations pretty
Yeah,
much.
that is insane. And it's one of those things where I guess to your point, the world of that is so large and populated and like seemingly lived in as well.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
which I'm not a big Rockstar Games guy generally. I find kind of like the open world aesthetic and kind of like the idea of the structure of those games to be a bit taxing on me, especially as I
Mm.
get older. But GTA 5 even is just like like a technical piece is incredible.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is quite
Hmm.
exciting for it to exist in the way that it does. And I can see why they continue to support it, for a
Hmm.
decade plus after.
Yeah.
Because it's a very solid, kind of like artful product,
Yeah.
and it's something that they value and that obviously made them a lot of money as well.
I think it's also the story. I'm also captivated by the story because it seems like it could be a movie. Like obviously, it's a game, so you do stuff like you fly helicopters to
Yeah.
places and stuff, and you got to kill people. But like the characters that you play as are like very well thought out, and like they all have their own history, and you get to know them very well as you play them. It's not just like some like three just freaking bums, to go out and kill
Yeah.
people. It's not like that. It's like there's depth to the character. It's very clear that they, had care for the story. And I think it's an interesting commentary, like we were talking about The Last of Us, how it seems like it's like a TV show as a game. Like
Yes.
the gameplay is the narrative, but I feel like Rockstar does it right, where like you still have choice. Like you have the missions that you have to do, but like there's different ways you can do them and you don't have to do them right away. And like no two people will go about it like in the exact same way because it is an open world. So like there's so many different possibilities, but like it does end up in the same place, but there's just it's you can go about it in different ways. I think they just do that sort of thing better than like The Last of Us, in
I
my opinion at
I
least.
would agree, and I think that like the Red Dead Redemption, series
Oh
is
yeah.
is kind of like tantamount to that idea
Mm,
because
yeah.
a lot of people view. I mean, I think Red Dead 2 was game of the year when it came
I
out. Like a
think
lot of
so,
people
yeah.
view that story and that particular kind of like character piece and its setting as being like one of the great stories told in modern games.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to me, yeah, as kind of like this dichotomy between those two methods of like storytelling, one of which is
Hmm.
like narrative first, I think gameplay and kind of like world second, whereas the other one is like world and gameplay first,
Yeah.
but within that is this like incredibly resonant, poignant story that
Hmm.
unfolds over the course of like several hours, and I think in the
Yeah.
case of Red Dead Redemption 2, it was like 40 plus hours or something
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rockstar, they know what they do, and they do it
Yes.
well. They're like
Hmm.
Wolverine, I'm the best I am at what I do. So there's a reason that they are kind of like titans of industry, and people care so
Yeah.
much for them.
Hmm.
So I guess as somebody that actually never finished the GTA 5 story, would you recommend that? Do you think that it is worth going
I
back
haven't
to?
finished it yet, actually. I think
Okay,
I'm like
okay.
on the final mission, I'm pretty sure. But y- yeah, I 100% I'd recommend it. Like I'm pretty sure that there's like a remastered version for the current gen consoles or something.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it looks even better now. So yeah, if you can get your hands on it, yeah,
Okay,
go
sweet.
for it.
No,
It's
I think
good.
that
It's really good.
that's all great news, and I probably should check it out again. It's difficult for me to find the time to commit to something like that, but I should have
Yeah.
kind of like a
I mean, it's taken me years.
that's
So
true. Yeah, it has. So I guess I shouldn't feel too bad. No, I can put together some time at some point soon to check that out. I think I've got some free time coming up,
Mm,
so that would be really fun, honestly. Thank you
mm,
for sharing, Daniel.
of course.
Did you have anything else you wanted to throw in there?
No,
Okay. Well,
your turn.
I'm talking about video games as well. So
Oh, okay,
I
cool.
hope that you were excited.
Yes,
We have a new Call of Duty coming out relatively soon.
that's right.
And even though my abilities as a multiplayer gamer have kind of failed me as I've gotten older, I am a big Call of Duty Zombies fan.
This guy.
I haven't managed to keep up with it like other people have, again, just because priorities have changed in life, and
Hmm.
the place that I'm at in life changed, and so on and so forth. But I played. You and I are old enough now to be unks, like we're old heads, So like my
No,
first,
no,
I
not
think
me.
I want to say the first ever Call of Duty I actually owned was Call of Duty World at War, which was
Okay.
2008, and that was a Treyarch Call of Duty. But that was also the originator of the Nazi Zombies game mode, which eventually
Yes.
would just evolve into Call of Duty Zombies, and that has been a staple of the Treyarch released Call of Duty games ever since. And there have even been, Call of Duty games produced by other development studios that borrow zombies as an idea and kind of like put their own unique spin on it. But
Yeah.
Black Ops 6 is coming out relatively soon, October
Hmm.
25th, I want to say. And kind of in preparation for one, and honestly, just to check to see if I can even play it anymore, just to make sure that I'm still good enough. I have been kind of going back through and trying to do a Call of Duty Zombies marathon where I
Oh,
kind of
really?
I play at least like one game session on each of the main Call of Duty Zombies maps before Black Ops 6 gets here. And I
Okay.
do have some caveats. I'm pretty much just doing World at War, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, and Black Ops 3. Um,
Okay.
because honestly, I was kind of falling off just by the time that Black Ops 3 had come around. But Black Ops 4, like I played like barely any of the zombies content for, and I
Yeah.
did not care for it. But I did play a lot of Black Ops Cold War,
Yeah,
so I
same.
kind of was able to jump back in, but it was still not to the level that it used to be. But at least for like
Hmm.
World at War, Black Ops 1, and Black Ops 2, like devout zombies player, consistently doing it, felt very good about it, did all the Easter
Hmm.
eggs, like all of this stuff. So it's really fun to go back in real time and kind of like see the lineage of this wave based kind of like, tower defense game mode morph into a whole kind of like peripheral game with its own side quests and
Yeah.
mechanics and like unique gameplay aspects
Hmm.
outside of what you would expect from the regular Call of Duty experience. And it's good, man. I guess something that I have realized in the interim is that I am not very good even at the zombies game mode anymore. I feel like I used to be more I had more situational awareness back in the day, whereas nowadays, like the
Yeah.
zombies are sneaking up on me, and I just
They're
I'm
eating
getting
you.
yeah, I'm getting too swiped real easily. I'm getting downed.
Uh,
My buddy, there will be like a 12-year-old kid that I joined a public lobby, and he's laughing at me for being bad at the game. I'm like, come on, dude, I was just trying to relive my glory days. So it's good. I
Punk.
think my main takeaways up to this point. So I played Knockdown Toten and Zombie Verrucht and I'm now on to Shino Numa. And these are all original World at War releases. And what I've taken from this so far is that my favorite version of Call of Duty Zombies, I think, was that earliest iteration where it was still very much a like pulp science fiction inspired
Yeah.
sci-fi horror tower defense game. Like
Hmm.
at least in Nocturne and Toten and Zombie Verrucht, there was so little semblance of a story at all that it was really
Yeah.
just like they effectively took the premise of Night of the Living Dead and just made it in the Call of Duty game. Like
Hmm.
that's what's going on there. So like that first game, you're stuck in like an airfield base. It's this like two-story building. It's not particularly large. You board up the windows as the zombies come in. You have to pick them off as they're getting at you, and you know
Hmm.
that you'll die eventually. Like that's kind of the point of the game. Like they will overwhelm you at some point, and
Hmm.
that's I think the most exciting and the most fun way for me to play zombies because then the
Yeah.
commitment is just that single match as well. Like it's not like an
Right.
ongoing game. Um, and you can play as much as you want or as little as you want. And I just think that that's quite fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm enjoying myself. I've been able to play with some of our friends as well that I haven't heard from in quite a while. So
That's cool.
it's been a good experience. I'm definitely going to keep doing it, but we'll see where I'm at when Black Ops 6 comes around. Because I also remember Cold War being an easier zombies experience anyway, because some of these early
Yeah.
zombies, I'm like, this is not particularly refined. Like it's pretty hardcore, but I think I
Hmm.
like that about it as well.
I
So
know.
it's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
weird kind of like,
Yeah.
push and pull relationship that I have
Hmm.
with like what zombies has kind of morphed into over time.
Yeah.
But I think that's all that I've really realistically got to talk about there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have no mail to go through, so this is probably going to be a lighter episode for us. Yeah,
Can't believe the no mail. You guys.
yeah, these guys are failing us, Daniel. I mean,
Oh
come
my
on.
gosh. Come
What's
on.
going on out there? Okay, well, that's going to be the show, everybody. Remember next week, Joker Folie à Deux, or Joker Piece of Poo is probably what that's actually going to turn out to be. But yeah, thank you so
We'll
much, everybody,
see.
for listening to another episode. We greatly
Hmm.
appreciate it. Reach out to us anytime, gutterrunpodcasting@gmail.com, and we hope that you have a lovely week.
See ya.